All systems go. Clear for liftoff.
What's going on, golf fans? It's your boy, GS Luke, here with our round 3 live stream for the CJ Cup Byron Nelson. We've got ourselves a little bit of a weird slate here, with round 2 still finishing up out there as we speak. So we're going to talk about all the strategy involved on a slate like this and how it might differ from a normal slate that we're breaking down here, because with people having to adjust last second, I've got a few theories on how you can find an edge today, but hopefully you guys are having a fantastic Saturday morning. I've got to say, I'm a much bigger fan of the morning live streams. Usually doesn't work out with the logistics, but I'm a little bit more awake, have a lot more energy when it hasn't been like 14 hours already in the day. So yeah, if I seem a little bit more upbeat, that's probably why. So over there on my channel, I try and do a lot of prop live streams in the morning. So if you're part of the morning crew, maybe can't join us over there at night for whatever reason, we're glad to have you here over there as well. We got Jay Ramos down there, C. Floyd, as Nick said, only the true D-Gens are down there for round 3 showdown. We got Steven Ross, down there as well again. Hopefully you're having a fantastic day, and yeah, somebody sweating a little Cam Davis out there as well. So yeah, that cut sweat's going to be a lot of fun, and yeah, we can sweat some players out there together here live. And any questions that you've got out there for round number 3, go ahead and hit me up with it. So you're saying you're guessing that the round 3 tee times have the edge. There's not really going to be an edge out there for that, Chris. So we'll talk about the reason for that here in a second, but not really. We got John down there. Cut still -4. It is -4 right now, but it should move to -5. I believe it's like a 99% chance or something like that. You got your double espresso, little iced coffee here for myself. I'm a basic bitch when it comes to my coffee. Little iced coffee, mocha, and cream. No sugar out there because the mocha already has the sugar, right? Which is what I don't understand about some of these coffee shops. They give you flavoring, sugar, and cream. Like, what are they trying to give everyone diabetes? Like, come on, what are we doing here? You have my vote for morning streams. Yeah, I like them a lot. What's going on? Julio, great Saturday morning, and let's go ahead and hop on in. So any of your questions, we'll get to those here in just a few minutes. Let's talk about this golf course for today. So if you go over here to splitting by wave, these are not accurate averages, by the way. So last night, the morning wave was already finished except for one player, and it was playing 2 strokes under par. So I'm not sure whether the interns over there at Data Golf had a few too many drinks last night or something, or if they just had a glitch in their system, that kind of thing going on. But this minus 1.33 scoring average, I have no idea what that is referring to. But this plus 1.11 scoring average is actually the scoring average from this morning. So that updated today. These averages that you see there in blue are what you had this morning. And I mean, you can see with that +1 scoring average, it has gone significantly harder today. Now, we kind of called that yesterday because of these cold temperatures that they were going to get. But by the time our slate starts out there for round number 3, it is not going to be that same kind of situation. You're talking about closer to the high 60s with the temperatures. And what is also worth noting about these averages is look at the holes that aren't counted yet. You've got hole number 9, which is playing a whole stroke under par. And then you have this over here at 18, which is playing 0.7 strokes under par. So, though it looks like a massive difference right now, and it is playing a little bit harder right now, undoubtedly. If you just look at the scores, you can see that from players out there this morning. It's not a 2.5 stroke difference. It's not a 3 stroke difference right out there from yesterday. You got to let all the data actually come in before we start to say those sort of things. So I do think it might be a little bit harder today because the winds are going to be up, but you do have the cut line in play. So higher talent level on average for the players out there today. And of course, also moving day pin locations, easier spots that are set up to go out there and set up fireworks. So scoring average, I think, is going to be a lot closer to what we had yesterday as you get into the PM wave. And the reason why I said there isn't going to be a big weather edge is that they've already told us that it's going to be threesomes off of holes 1 and 10, and that they're going off from 1 to 3 p.m. So you're talking about a 2-hour spread out there with the tee times. And you can see from 1 to 3, it's almost identical with the conditions. And if anything, your latest guys out might get a little bit of a break when it comes to the wind later on, but the golf course is also going to firm up. So I would say that any sort of advantage you get with the lower winds is probably probably taken away with the course getting a little bit firmer. I mean, with a solid 12-mile-an-hour wind today, it is going to dry up a little bit more than usual, especially because they're calling for sunny conditions the entire day as well, which is why I think it's going to play pretty flat. Now, just because it's playing flat doesn't mean that you can just go out there and take all the guys at the top, because we've got to incorporate game theory as well. So in my opinion, this is a very balanced slate when it comes to your lineup construction. It's not one where I'm going all in on early starters, all in on chalk up there towards the top. I'm never going to be all in on the chalk towards the top. You guys know I like to play that game theory edge, go out there and try and beat the rest of the field. But I'm going to have some early guys out there for leverage, maybe some of the first few groups off. And the thing I'll say about some of the first few groups off is those are going to be, by the way, the guys in the middle of the leaderboard. Those are some of my favorite plays for rounds 2 and 3 showdown, especially round 3 showdown when we have them in this kind of situation, because it's the guys that are playing solid golf. They're in the middle of the leaderboard, but they're not playing great golf. And great golf would be ideal to have. That's why we target a lot of those guys out there in our cash lineups. But for a GPP sort of scenario, even a single entry tournament where you're trying to take down a lot of other entries, you want to make sure that you can get some leverage into those builds, right? You don't want to have all that chalk out there, which is why I like to go a little bit further down the board to the guys that are playing solid golf, but maybe not the best golf on the board, that are getting all of that attention. So in a situation like this, not only are you getting those players going off early that, you know, in theory, some slates, you would say we're getting better conditions on a day like this. Maybe not the case so much today, but they're setting up well for the golf course. They're playing good enough golf to make the cut and be in the top half of the field. But they're going to get you some leverage if you go out there and throw them into lineups. So I would say that I'm going to have probably a few more guys in my player pool that are starting closer to that 1 p.m. time, just because of that leverage aspect and not so much because of the weather, right? Like I might have a few conviction plays going off a little bit later. Heck, maybe even somebody that just hardly made the cut that is also going off later. Because remember, guys, they start from the middle of the leaderboard with tee times in this kind of scenario, and they move outwards. So your last groups off are either going to be the guys in the lead or the guys that just hardly made the cut and were the last few groups in. So it's a different tee time situation than what we usually see out there on tour, but not a massive weather edge in my opinion. So just to reiterate, maybe if you're just joining us over here, first off, smash the like button if you guys haven't already, but it's 3 sums off of holes 1 and 10. So in my opinion, not a massive weather edge to be had. What we can do, though, is try and look at some of the shots gained metrics, which for the AM guys, we already have all of those players finished, so we can go through some of those guys together. But even for the guys that are on the golf course, maybe it's not a complete 18-hole picture quite yet, but we could start to get a pretty good sense for how they're playing out there. So let me go ahead and refresh this just to make sure that we have all the up-to-date information over here and bet the number. By the way, now is the great time to go ahead and hit me up with any player deep dives that you have, anyone that you want my take on in particular. But we're going to go through some shots gained metrics, right, for guys that finished and guys out there on the course to help you try and find some players to use. And the one thing that you have to keep an eye on out here for this kind of slate is play guys who make the cut. DraftKings is not going to do that work for you. Maybe at the very last second, they'll be able to adjust for that and push out all the missed cut tags, that kind of thing. But don't rely on that on a slate like this. So when you're going through the shots gained metrics, you want to make sure that all the guys you're looking at are actually going to be playing, because trust me, I've seen it before. A lot of guys that miss the cut on a slate like this end up getting played in lineups. And you don't want to be that slappy that gets caught with that. Adam Svensson, why you got to go hit the creek? Feels pretty typical for guys this morning, man. But yeah, that's absolutely there. You were thinking that the morning round 3 would have the edge because of extra golf in the greens. Yeah, Chris, it's 3 sums off of both sides, though. So there's not really any AMT times to speak of. No 6 of 6s for you, 1 slapdick killing each lineup. I've got a few 5 of 6s, but definitely a lot of 6 of 6s too. So we'll see how it all shakes out this weekend. Thoughts on Spieth? So you said my unbiased thoughts. I don't know if that's even possible, Nick, but unbiased thoughts, they're great this week. I mean, round 1, I already told you, gained ball striking and lost putting. They did the same thing today. So this is round 1. We already mentioned this one yesterday. Out there for yesterday, I should say, you gained 3 strokes between the ball striking categories and then lost about a stroke there putting. That's like the perfect kind of stat profile out there for round 3. So you already know I love the guy to begin with. You give me this kind of stat profile, and there's a 100% chance that I'm going out there and using him in my player pool. So yeah, he's one of the few guys that I already marked down as a yes, which last night I only went through the AM guys. I went through the shots gained metrics, found some of my top plays, and went at it that way. This morning's where I'm going to add all my PM guys into it. And now I think it's a good time to talk about some of my theories for finding an edge today, because if there's anything you're going to take from this live stream, it should be this next 5 minutes that I talk through here, because this slate should not be handled like every other slate that you have. So I have a few theories on this. In single entries, my theory for today is that a lot of AM guys are going to get the steam. Sorry, opposite on that. In GPPs, so we are entering more than one entry. Sorry, I had that backwards. I think the AM guys are going to get a lot of steam today. The reason for that is that you have to go out there and manage a portfolio when you're entering in those sort of contests. Now, a sharp like myself has late swap. I'm able to go out there and optimizer and do it rather quickly, but that is a small subset of players that are playing in a lot of those casual contests. By these sort of contests, I'm talking about like the big $20 like you have here. Heck, even the $5 drive the green that you have out there for tomorrow. These sort of contests, because you can 150 max, because you're going to have some casual players that enter like 10 to 20 lineups here that might not even know about the fact that the PM guys are still playing, or might not even be bothered to go out there and change their lineups this morning, right? They might have gone out there and just took an all guys they already knew were through the cut line and used them out there in their 20 max. I think that in those sort of portfolio-based contests that people aren't going to be willing to take as many of those PM guys that are making it through the cut. And especially the players in those kind of contests that are starting from outside the cut line that end up within the cut line by the end of the round today. So in my opinion, to go back to some of these numbers over here, right? We could talk through the shots gained metrics, trying to find our top plays. That is a part of my process. In my opinion, though, the biggest edge out there in the large field GPPs would be to play the PM guys that sneak their way through the cut. And it is that simple. However, and this is where I was getting a little bit ahead of myself on it, in the single entry contests, so contests where you're only entering one lineup at a time, I do not think that is going to be the case because for obvious reasons, you're only managing one set of 6 players. Will there be people that just aren't bothered to go out there and change their lineups? Sure, that's going to be the case out there in every single contest. But for the people that do see that information and are able to go out there and adjust for it, you can bet their ass that they're going to start changing their single entry lineups first. So in my opinion, that edge going after the PM guys isn't going to be as drastic over there in the single entry contest as what you're going to get out there in the large field GPPs. So for example, the $100 single entry over here that you can see I entered the albatross, I entered the dog leg, I entered pretty much all the single entries that you have out there for this kind of slate. I'm not sure what I'm going to do for GPPs yet, just because I want to have my projections done before I commit to going out there and reserving entries. By the way, there's plenty of room in them, so I'm not worried about them filling before I have to go out there and do so. Not to say that they'll overlay. They'll probably have a lot of entries put in over the next hour or so, but I will have time to go out there and get my 50 or so entries out there into the GPPs if I want to. But the single entries, I think you can go after some of the morning guys because people will adjust for that PM wave. So I think it kind of depends on the contest that you're entering, how you'd go out there and get that game theory edge. In your single entries, I don't know if there's as much of an opportunity to go out there and leverage the field, but when you're going against portfolios of lineups, against casuals that might not want to go out there and change in the $5 and $20 GPPs, then you might want to really go after those low-owned PM guys that aren't going to be getting all of that attention. So those PM guys, right, we're not really going to be able to talk about here on the shots gained metrics. So that's why I wanted to go ahead and talk about it right off the bat, because it is super important. Those kind of players, I mean, heck, we don't even know right now who those guys are going to be. You want to jam them into those large field GPPs. I just think there's going to be so much opportunity for leverage there that you might want to think about taking some of those guys in your lineups. And it's not to say that they're 100% going to get there, but if you're getting a guy, let's say it's a 7K range player at like 1% ownership because he just snuck his way through the cut line, and you have guys around him that are like 7 to 10% owned, I mean, that's leverage city right there. That's how you go out there and really move up the GPPs if your guy hits. And if you can find players that make sense, that just move their way through the cut line, then that would be the absolute nuts. Let's go through these ball striking stats. So let's go through a few players that I already know I'm using for today. So Nico Echeverria, for example, already in my player pool. He gained over 5 strokes ball striking yesterday, including over just 4 strokes with the approach play alone. He lost strokes in the 2 short game categories, so he probably could have guessed that he would have been towards the top end of my list. Now, the thing that's worth noting about Nico is that he's got some ownership behind him, right? So you're not going to be playing him without him being used in maybe like 10 to maybe even 15% of lineups. So if you're going to use him, you're going to have to differentiate elsewhere. You've also got guys like Siwoo Kim here that gained over or almost 4 strokes ball striking, I should say. But you can see also lost about 2.5 strokes in the short game category. So another guy that I'm using out there in lineups, I'll just be fully transparent about that. I already know I'm using Jordan Spieth as well. So these sort of players, you can see it's pretty much the case with everyone but a Scotty Scheffler. lost strokes with the short game, but gained over there with the off the tee and approach. So Scotty, I am fading out there for my round 3 lineups. It is probably the scariest thing to say, considering how he's played the first few days, but he's like 50% owned. I've got him just under 50% projected ownership, even at nearly a 14K price tag out there in round 3 showdown, which is just an automatic fade spot. If you're going to get 2x leverage on Scotty, go out there and lock him into every single lineup. But if you're going to go out there and match the field on him, unless you're 150 maxing, I don't think it's the smartest play. Like if you're just entering a few single entries and you've got him in half of them and not in the others, like I don't know if that's really the smartest decision. And if you're going with like 20 lineups and you have 10 with them and 10 without them, like just pay the rake at that point, right? If you only have 20 lineups, just commit to one side or the other, either lock them or take them out of all of your lineups altogether. And I'm taking him out of my lineups altogether. He's just very expensive. He's 6 strokes ahead. I expect him to go out there and shoot like another -7. Like if he does, then so be it. Like I'm fully resigned to that ahead of time. If he goes out there and he plays like he has the first few days, then so be it, right? I'm going to lose out there in showdown, but I don't want to play the 50% owned player that, in my opinion, his hit rate it's significantly higher, right, than some of the other guys behind him. But because those guys behind him have to make up so many shots, I like their mindset more for tomorrow. Scotty is kind of protecting a lead out there from 6 strokes ahead. Him shooting 4 or 5 under par would be more than enough to go out there and pretty much secure victory, or at least still have like a 4 or 5 shot lead heading into the last round. Guys like Jordan Spieth, other guys in that 9-10K range, like a Siwoo Kim, that are starting towards the bottom, I like their chances to try and move up the board. And what you can see with guys like Jordan and Siwoo, because they're there at T30, they're going to be some of the first few groups off. Now, not that there's a massive weather edge today, there's not going to be, but they are going to be those guys that I think might be a little bit overlooked compared to those guys towards the top end of the leaderboard. Let's go through a few other shots gain metrics here. So Bramlett kind of looks like he's setting up well. Adam Schenk as well, gaining close to 3 strokes out there with the ball striking stats. Johnny Vegas also lost nearly 2 strokes over there with the short game. Solid out there hitting the ball. Sungjae Im, same exact kind of thing. So of these guys at the top, I think all but like 2 or 3 of them, I think it's all but 2 of them actually, I'm using out there in my lineup. So you guys know it's a pretty straightforward process for me. And because we only had half the field to work with, and we didn't have a whole bunch of like course history guys, at least on that side of the wave that were going to make the cut, this is what I used for a lot of my early player pool leans. Now, the other aspect are going to be those PM guys, which I think are going to be absolute gold. So this will be our first time taking a look at the leaderboard. Wow, is -4 live? I really didn't think -4 was going to be live, but let's look at the probability. So let's refresh this to make sure it's actually like the latest update. So it's still 0.4%. I don't know if I agree with that. Have they fully updated it? So yeah, they do have these guys at T62. I guess what they're banking on is the fact that 18 and 9 are going to be par 5s, and they're the easiest holes on the golf course. In fact, right, we go up to the scoring averages up here, bring it down hole by hole, 0.86 under par, then 0.72 strokes under par. So, they're banking on a lot of these guys at -4 to go out there and make a birdie, like Perez, and you've got a whole bunch of them. I mean, yeah. So yeah, it is going to be a -5 cut. I don't want to say that definitively because shit happens out there on the PGA Tour. But with all these guys, with those 2 really easy holes to go out there and finish on, you'd have to think that at least 4 of them, right, are going to go out there and make a birdie there. Now, could some of them fall down and kind of fall out of placement to get to -5? Yeah, that could happen, right? It would take a lot of wind to go out there and cause that much carnage. But that's why it's a 0.4% chance. It's within the realm of possibility for it to stay there at -4, but it is for sure not going to go to -6. With the kind of scoring that we've had this morning, a little bit harder than what we had yesterday. Not a ton harder, as I mentioned, right? Got to include those last few holes before you make that full judgment there. A little bit harder, it's not going to get to -6, which let me see. So they still haven't gone to those holes yet. Yeah, nothing on 9, nothing over there on 18 yet. When this updates, it's going to be like a stroke and a half difference. Yeah, it's like 0.3, 0.4 strokes harder, I guess, over there on that side. So anyone that may have played that side of the draw, I don't know if I'd panic too much about it. I didn't do that myself or anything, but I'll just give you guys a little bit of comfort there because it's going to come back down to earth a little bit. Pendrith will miss at -4. He will. That's a piece of chalk that I'm glad I didn't play. I think it'll be a -5 cut for sure. Of course, Chris, I've got you. Are they going to finish round 3 today? You'd think so, Joe. The only thing that would cause them not to finish would be a delay again. Because if they're starting the last few groups at 3 p.m. local time, they've got 5 hours until sundown. Sundown's about 8 p.m. over there in McKinney, Texas. So, yeah, they should finish. Like, unless there's an hour delay or like the slowest groups in human history out there, they'll finish the round. We talked about Ross's dude yesterday. Can you show Steelman's profile? Yeah, let's look at the Steelman, huh? We got to think of a nickname for him because it's too good of a last name to not have something for him. He was mostly around the green today, so yeah, I don't know if I'd want to go back to him after what he did for today, but he's going to be low owned. He's there at T30. He's not going to raise too many eyebrows, too much attention down there in that 6K range. I don't know. Ross should play him, that's for sure. Bramlett and Rosner dive. So Bramlett, we kind of saw in the shots gained metrics earlier, but just to remind you there, really good profile for today. He gained off the tee, gained on approach, and then lost in the 2 short game categories. And then who was the other one? Rosner, right? That you wanted me to deep dive. So Rosner is finished over there at -5, should make the cut. For sure, should make the cut. And he gained off the tee and on approach and then lost in the 2 short game categories. Just to make sure I'm not giving you incorrect information. Yes, right. So he's at -5. I didn't throw any of the -5s into my player pool quite yet, just because I didn't know if they were going to be safe at that sort of number. But now that I know Rosner is safe, I'm actually going to go ahead and just change that right now. He's in my player pool out there for today. So I like him quite a bit. I like both of those guys. Ross Stillman season. Jaeger dive. So yeah, Jaeger's kind of falling apart right now. So let's see how that's happening. I haven't been paying that much attention to the golf this morning, to be frank. I've been busy with some other stuff around the house, doing my errands and whatnot. But yeah, gaining off the tee and then losing a bunch of strokes around the green with the putter. This is a good bounce back spot. He's got to make the cut, though. Still has 6 holes to go out there and hold on. But if he makes it, assuming that it's the same kind of stat profile by the time that we get finished through 18, he'll make his way into my player pool if he makes it onto the weekend. But, you know, that double at 7, that's really hard to stomach because, I mean, -7 is like top 15, top 20 at this point in the event. We'll see how he finishes off his round. And I kind of hope that he doesn't finish off too strongly just so that he's not chalk. Because if he's there at like T45, T30 like a Spieth or a Siwoo Kim are, then I think he's a really decent bounce back spot out there in Showdown. Thoughts on Toasty? So I love myself some Toasty this week, but we'll look at the shots gained metrics just to give you an idea. Toasty gaining off the tee and then gaining into 2 short game categories. I mean, his stat profile round 1 wasn't much better. In fact, he gained like 1.4 strokes around the green. I played him today just because he's a high upside player. He's a high birdie percentage player. The things I look for in players, look for ball strikers, I look for short game regression candidates. So guys that maybe lost a whole bunch of strokes around the green with the putter that are maybe due for some regression. I look for course history players. And then I also look for these high upside players at times. Now, normally with these high upside players like a Toasty, I only use them when they're low owned. So out here for tomorrow's Showdown slate, or today's Showdown slate, I should say, I'm probably not playing Toasty. In fact, as of right now, let me double check. I'm like 90% sure I don't have them in my player pool. I do have them in my main slate pool, so it's a little bit of a self-hedge, not using them out there in round 3. But I've got them getting a little bit more ownership than some of the other guys around them. Now, Sam Stevens at -12, he is mega chalk over there at $7,600. Toasty isn't quite on that level when it comes to the ownership right now, but he's high owned enough where with this kind of stat profile, I'm just not going to use him very often. So I'm staying away from it. Hopefully I'm not mute anymore. It might have been on your end, Jay. Let me know, guys. Steelman, the man of iron. I was trying to think of a way to like connect it to the Steelers or something like that. But if he was from Pittsburgh, I'd be a huge fan. Steelman and then the Pittsburgh background. We'll have to see more about him. Can EVR do it again? Let's take a look at this profile because, I mean, he played in the AM. He already finished his round and whatnot. Very balanced out there in round number 1. And then today or yesterday, depending on how you want to look at this round, gained off the tee on approach. And then the 2 short game categories were decent, but only gained about a stroke between them. Can he do it again? For sure, because EVR is a winner on tour before, especially like before 6 months from now. I mean, he was a much better player than what we've seen lately. I'm okay with it. I'm not going to say I would count on it just because his form has fallen off. He's become a lot more inconsistent here this year, but I remember the sort of player he was before. He's a PGA Tour winner. Not everyone can say that out there in this kind of field. And he showed up in some big like events too, like big, decent fields. Ben Griffin wet again. Another piece of chalk I didn't play. Keep telling me the chalk I didn't play that hits it in the water, man. That's if you want to make me smile, that's a way to do it. Any idea, in my opinion, how much time we'll have between round 2 end and round 3 beginning? I hate to be that guy, Nick. I said it earlier to you, but I have no idea. Let me take a look at like where the last guy is on the course. Like maybe that's the best way to do this for you. So they're through their 7th hole. they probably need 3 hours to finish. So it's not much time at all, if that's the case, right? If it's going to take them 3 hours to finish, that puts us at about 2 p.m. Eastern time, which is 1 p.m. local, which is when they plan on starting out there in round number 3. So there's not going to be much time, but the only guys to finish, there's only going to be like 5 or maybe 10 guys on the course for the last half an hour or so that are going to matter. And of those like 5 to 10 players, who knows how many of them are actually going to be sweating the cut line. And because it's, for lack of a better word, outside of Rasmus Højgaard, it's all like slapdicks, maybe Michael Thorbjornsen. We give a little bit of an exemption to as well, but it's not studs that we have here in the last like 5 to 6 groups of the day. So you're not going to have much time like actually in between the rounds, but you're going to have a really good idea of like who's making the cut or not. It's just that you're going to have to stay on top of it. You're going to have to look at the leaderboard, and it's it's an annoying slate, but if you stay on top of it, there's an edge to be had because there are people, this is why I meant like in the big GPPs, for example, that just won't do that. They're too lazy. They have stuff to do. It's Saturday. I get it, right? People have time with family, sports with their kids. Hell, I've got shit to do this afternoon to go out and do. So like, I totally understand it, but if you can adjust to it, there's an edge to be had, at least in my opinion on that. Just a question. How long did it take for me to become profitable on a consistent basis? It's a really good question, Akeem. So when I first started in college, just kind of playing for fun, I was decently profitable right off the bat because I knew what I was doing out there in football, but I was nowhere near where I am for today. Like I was a lot more inconsistent then. Like I'd have a couple big takedowns for Showdown, whatnot. I would say like 2.5 years, 3 years before I actually felt comfortable with my process. But during that 2.5 to 3 years, I was extremely profitable during that time. So I can't really say that like there was really any stretch in my DFS career where I wasn't a profitable player, because I have been my entire career. But until I felt like I had more consistency with my results, 2.5 to 3 years. And what I found over that 2.5 to 3 years is to focus on what I was good at. I feel like that was the biggest change that I made. Like the game theory, a lot of that was just kind of innate to me. I understand that a lot of stuff from poker, for example, other sports, other actual board games I play. I learned a lot of game theory from over the years. That was kind of innate to me. Learning how to focus on golf. That was my sport. I played college golf. I understand golf better than other sports. Focusing on football, that was one of my main focuses. Rather than focusing on like 4 or 5 different sports, that's where I found an edge. So hopefully that helps. And if you have any other questions, you can let me know. What's going on, Bob? Thoughts on Will Gordon? So yeah, he had a really good stat profile, man. So the stat profile loves him. So if you're a fan of that kind of stuff, then go for it. Lost in the 2 short game categories, and in my player pool, let me double check on that. I'm like 90% sure I have him down as a short game guy. Let's see. So yeah, he's in my player pool as of right now as a short game regression candidate because of all those strokes he lost around the green with the putter. So I like those. How hard is ownership to do on a slate like this? Very hard, Paul. I'm glad you kind of get it, right? I'm sure you're asking that question because you know how hard it would be. It is a headache, bro. And like, I've got to say that they're not going to be as accurate on a slate like this. There's just no way to have them as accurate as I'd like them to be, because you never know how many people are going to adjust for the PM side. But yeah, I've gotten better at it over time. It's gone a little bit easier as I've gone used to it. What I normally do is what I mentioned with the projections. Like the PM guys, I put a little bit lower owned than the AM guys, just because I know that there's a subset of the population that is not going to change their lineups for it. Castillo going to be super chalky. I don't know if I'd say super chalky, but yeah, I've got him getting some ownership. My ownership projections still have a lot of work to be done, as we just kind of hinted at there, but I've got him at 15% right now. So if guys like Perez, Lauer make the cut, Carl Phillips, he'll probably take some of that ownership away from guys like him. Even Johnny Vegas will probably have to lower his ownership projection a little bit. Like I said, like we didn't know whether those guys are going to make the cut or not, so I didn't put their ownership projections as high as some of the other guys around him. But yeah, Paul, it's a freaking headache, as you can't tell, dude. It's a hard slate for sure. I mentioned Thor. Can I show his shots metrics? For sure. You have him for a little bit of a ladder with those placements. So yeah, for sure. We can take a look at that. Second. I had a little glitch on the screen there. So Thor Bjornsson, he lost in the 2 short game categories, at least through his first 8 holes. And he's been about neutral at the 2 ball striking categories. So we'll see what happens over his last 9 holes, the 10 holes out there on the golf course. But kind of a short game regression candidate, if I've ever seen one. You know, losing 3 strokes short game in just 8 holes reeks coming back down to earth, like in a good way too, right? Not in a bad way coming back down. When will tee times come out? as soon as the round ends, man. They have to know how many people are making the cut to go out there and do so. So we're not going to know that, Jay, until after the round ends. And that's probably going to be about 5 to 10 minutes before they start the next round. So it's going to be a crazy turnaround, man. All right, let's go through some of the other shots gained metrics on here. So I went through some of your player pool questions. Any other ones you want to go through, go ahead and let me know. I want to look at some of the short game regression stuff. So some of these guys that are going to make the cut that could not make a putt are definitely worth a few looks. So a Rosner, for example, I already told you I added him to my player pool over there at -5. If a Jaeger makes the cut, he could be worth a few looks out there from that perspective. But some of these other guys over there at -5, like a Thor Bjornsson, I know we literally just talked about him. These are the kind of guys that I'd play that you just hope that they putter, make a few more chips out there for the next day. On the other hand, though, these guys that gained a whole bunch of strokes in these two categories are almost automatic fades for me. So, like, for example, a Camilo Villegas that's gained over 3 strokes putting. Like, I love the guy. He does a lot of work for my mom's hospital down here in South Florida, but like, no, thank you. Camilo Villegas is going to be a fade for me. A Sam Burns gaining over 4 strokes short game. Sam Burns is a really good putter, but I have a hard time wanting to get to Sam Burns after he already had his nuke round. So these guys towards the top, like even a Kitayama, I played a bunch of them for main slate this week, doing wonders for that exposure. But in Showdown, he's not going to make my player pool with those sort of shots gained metrics. That's what I'm looking for out there. And because the round hasn't ended, you maybe can't use these with that full confidence, but you can use it for the guys from the AM side, right? All of them have finished their rounds. And if you just keep an eye on these shots gained metrics over the next hour, hour and a half, you can get an even better idea for how some of these guys are playing. So use these to your advantage as you typically do over there. But in terms of your contest selection, it's not amazing, but it's actually better than I thought it would be out there for this kind of slate. You do have the big 555, which is always a little bit too top heavy for my liking, but you do have a $20 and a $5 GPP to enter, a couple $100 single entries, and you can see, right, I entered the big $100 single entry already. There's a good chance that with my player pool adding some PM guys that I'm going to add some lineups either into this $5 or maybe even the $20 GPP. I kind of want to see what the overlay situation is looking like, because as of right now, this $20 is on pace to have less entries than what you have in this $5 contest. And it has less total, right? It's only there at 4,700 as opposed to the 5,200 over here. But if there's going to be close to overlay or even overlay in this kind of contest, then maybe I do throw 50 lineups over there into this $20, $1,000 out there in lineups, just because I think that no one's, or I shouldn't say no one, but not a lot of people are going to play these guys out there from the PM side. So contest selection, that's really most of it. You've got your $12 GBPs, your $33 dog leg that I also went out there and reserved an entry for. That I'll be putting a lot of my exposure behind. And in terms of your lineup construction, I think this is where it comes down to what kind of contest you're entering. If I'm in a single entry, I don't know if there's as much of an edge to going out there and taking those PM guys, because with just one lineup to go out there and manage, people are going to be able to go out there and get those guys into lineups. So I'm going to stick to a lot of my AM ball strikers actually out there for that kind of lineup. So let's start with the Jordan Spieth, second man in, throw in a Siwoo Kim. Third man in, let's find another one of those ball strikers that I know did a good job out there in the morning. And in this portion of the board, I don't think there's a ton of them, but Jake Knapp there at -5, we can throw him in there. Hit a decent enough day out there at the ball striking stats. And down here in the 7K range is where we really have to start thinking about the ownership component. So I'm trying to find guys that are starting a little bit further down the board. And I could just tell you off of memory, a lot of these players here are still on the golf course. So let's throw in Celinda just because I know he finished his round. He's another guy that I'm also using out there in some lineups today. And let's throw in Bramlett there at $7,100. These sort of players are still getting some ownership. Like Celinda's T29, he's not going to be chalk, but he's getting some ownership at that number. Bramlett's probably going to be close to 7 to 10% owned. For our last man in, this is a single entry. So, right, I kind of prefaced it with that to go ahead and start. In a single entry, you don't have to worry about the ownership as much, which is why we can afford to take average to maybe even slightly above average ownership players over here on this portion of the board. And as long as your last man in here isn't like the mega chalk at this range, you're going to be totally fine. So like, for example, if you used Rosner as your last man in, that'd be okay out there for a single entry type of build. You'd have enough leverage to try and move up against those other kind of entries. And because the single entries for today aren't very large, like I can tell you just from reserving all my entries already, you don't have to have infinite leverage out there in those kind of builds. Now, if you were entering like for the big $20, like we have loaded in right here, my thought process gets a little bit different. This is where I'm trying to take guys that I know are actually going to move within the cut line. So for example, let's actually refresh the leaderboard here. And let's see if we can find some guys that are sneaking themselves into the cut line and that we can try and find for some leverage. So Benny Ann, he probably bogeyed, or actually he double bogey? Yeah, he did, I guess, over there on that ball that he hit out of bounds. Actually, just back-to-back bogeys. Look at that. And he's going to make a par there. Okay, it's a par 4. Benny Ann choking away his chance at going out there and making the cut. But if he does make the cut, he does have 18 to go out there and make a birdie. This would be like a great guy to go out there and throw into this kind of lineup. So, this isn't the kind of build that we would really have an idea of being able to go out there and enter right now. But in those GPPs, this is the kind of thing I'm looking at. And like Hughes, I know he's kind of choking right now too, but let's see where he's at. So he's also there at -4. All right, so maybe let's not use Hughes because that's looking like a double right there. And he might have to make 3 birdies coming in to go out there and make the cut. But these are the kind of players I'm looking to play because people aren't going to have that much confidence in them and actually playing tomorrow or today. So like Rasmus here at $8,700, he's the kind of player that he'll probably still get played because he's at like -8, -9. Like he's safe through the cut line. He might not get that same effect, but like a Steven Jaeger here, who's I believe still at -5. Let's double check on good old Jags. Yeah, -5 at this point. These are the kind of guys I think you could get at slightly lower ownership. So let's throw them in there. Let's see if Harry Hall, for example, goes out there and has a miraculous made cut. Let's see where he stands. By the way, it'd be really nice if he could make the cut. I've got him in quite a few lineups. Let's see. So he's on the back 9. He'd have to shoot like -2 most likely to go out there and make the cut at this point. If he sneaks his way through, like he'd be a great low-owned player to go out there and throw into some of these kind of lineups. Thor Bjornsson, right? He's kind of on the edge right now. He's over there at -5, if memory serves me correctly. Like these sort of players, I don't think they're going to be like unowned, like 0-1% owned, but half the ownership of the guys in the AM wave is, I think, pretty reasonable out there in these GPPs. And you can't tell me that they're half as likely to succeed. In fact, in a lot of cases, like guys like Jaeger and Benny Ann, like they have really good course history around here. Hall, Thor Bjornsson, really good birdie makers, just decent fantasy projections to start. Go out there and throw them into a lineup. And it doesn't have to all be guys that fit this kind of description. Like you can still throw in an Echeverria, striping it out there from the AM side. You can round it off with another AM guy if you wanted to, like McGreevy, right? Like he has decent stats. He went out there, he finished in the AM wave at -5. But these players towards the top that are a little bit lower owned than their peers, I think are going to be absolute gold out there in that sort of format. So that's how my personal strategy is going to change a little bit out there from single entries out there to the large scale GPPs, just to try and take advantage of what I think is a little bit of a different slate dynamic. This doesn't always happen. A lot of slates are normally kind of cookie cutter out here for Showdown, but I don't think that this kind of slate is that day. Like this seems like the kind of slate that's going to turn out a lot differently than usual. And, my projections kind of get thrown through a loop, but everyone out there has that same kind of thing going on. So you want to make sure that you're playing against that and kind of know the cards that everyone is playing with. So you're saying that you're a loser since day one, but you have a few random wins, never profited until you found Luke and started playing PGA. Hey, I got to say that's a good thing, Chris. You're doing a lot of advertising for me, I guess, out there in the chat by saying that. But yeah, I try and be helpful where I can. And I said that I started off as a profitable player, but I don't want to like make that seem like that's normal. It's not. I also don't want to like make myself feel like I'm better than I am because I'm a human. I do this like everyone else, but I just had a really good background for getting into DFS. I'm an electrical engineer by trade. Like I said, I had a lot of that background in game theory going on as well. So I had a much better chance to be a profitable player off the start, but my goal is to give you guys that information as well, right? Kind of tag along the information, teach you guys how to fish per se out there for any given slate. So yeah, man, hit me with any questions that you've got. I'd love to make you a long-term profitable player as well. Is Scheffler in play for a single entry? Yeah, so because you're not looking at the ownership as much, like, yeah, single entry is totally fine because if you're using them in that one lineup, you've got them locked. You've got that 2x leverage right there in 100% of your lineup. So yeah, he's in play. He does change up your lineup construction quite a bit too. So I mentioned this a little bit for main slate. You guys saw the main slate stream this week because it was over here on the SHIPIT Nation channel. But when you use a guy that's $13,000, it does momentous things for your average salary remaining. And the example that I was giving this week is I went like Scheffler, then Knapp as my second man in, right? Like I did that in a lot of lineups this week. So thank God, looks like Knapp is going to make the cut. That one would have stung a lot out there with some of these lineups that I was entering. But look at what that does. You went with that kind of lineup. Now they're a little bit more expensive now than what they were for main slate. That puts you at like $7,000 remaining for your last 4 players. If you're going to use that kind of lineup construction, it's usable because your last 4 players, you're going to get a bunch of leverage out there on those sort of guys. And I have a lot of Scheffler lineups that have 5 guys other than Scheffler that are all sub 10% owned. So Knapp obviously isn't an example of one of those second man ins that I was able to do that with, but I have lineups where the total ownership is just beautiful out there for my main slate lineup. So yeah, can you use them? For sure. It's just that you have to be careful about it. You've got to be intentional about getting different, because Scotty at that 50% mark it's hard to offset. Can I deep dive Will Gordon? So yeah, we did it a little bit earlier, but I'll refresh you because you're probably just joining us over there, which is totally fine, by the way. He lost a bunch of strokes short game. So if you're looking for a short game regression candidate, he would fit that kind of description, and he is in my player pool for that reason today. So ball striking, he needs to be a little bit sharper off the tee. Iron play was good enough over there at 1.4 shots gained. But this short game is where I think the opportunity lies, because it's highly unlikely that he's going to lose over 2.5 stroke short game very often out there on the PGA Tour. In fact, if we go to round number 1, he gained nearly 2 strokes putting, and the ball striking was even better than what you had for today. So yeah, a little bit of a Will Gordon bounce back I could see for sure. He said, hands down, the best value available. Seriously, $15 for the game theory. You guys don't have to do all this advertising for me. I appreciate you down there in the chat, though. But yeah, I'm partial to it, right? $15 for all the stuff I do is, yeah, it's a pretty good deal, I guess, right? But make sure to check out the SHIPIT Nation stuff as well, guys. They've got great tools over there, which I saw a note down there in the channel that they're going to try and update their projections, which just shows you the sweaty tryhard mentality that we have over here, right? And it's why I partner with a site like SHIPIT Nation. They've got the same mentality as I do. Like, when I go out there, give my members exactly all the information they need to go out there and have success. So hopefully they can do that this morning. I'm going to be trying to do so myself for my members on my Patreon, try and get them some updated projections, because I'm sure there are sites out there, plenty of them, by the way, that just aren't even doing anything out there for round number 3. I know it's harder. I mean, I've bitched about it multiple times already about how it's harder to go out there and make projections for this kind of slate, but so be it, right? Not everything in life is easy, right? Not everything in life is just going to be go out there, make a projection sheet and upload it. Like, yeah, put in a little bit of work for your paying customers. So I love that SHIPIT has that kind of mentality. It's exactly what I want to see with any site that I'm doing, content with, that sort of thing. And the other ones out there that aren't doing so, let's say that you're a part of a site that doesn't do that, then maybe consider joining a site that does, right? I think SHIPIT, my Patreon are great sites to go out there and join, both of them. In fact, I think you should be a member of if you guys haven't already. But if you're part of a site that isn't doing that sort of thing, then maybe let them know. And hey, maybe you don't even have to leave their site. Just tell them to be better about what they're doing. Like, there's really no excuse to not be. Like, most of those other sites, by the way, have teams of people doing it. Like SHIPIT, it's a small team of grinders that we have over there. My site, it's just me that I have doing my projections. Some of these bigger sites have teams of people that do their projections. You can't tell me that one of them can't take some time on a Saturday morning to go out there and help out their customers. It's bullshit. It is. They're just lazy. They just don't feel like going out there and doing it. So join the SHIPIT Nation. Join my website if you guys want all those projections. That's all I've got out there for this round 3 stream. I've got to get out of here so I can go ahead and update some of those out there for my members. But let me see if there's any last second questions. Looks like we're good out there from that angle. Hope to see you guys out there towards some of the top end of some of those contests. And see you guys out there for the round 4 live stream, which hopefully tonight, I'm going to cross my fingers. I'm going to knock on wood over there, because barring a delay, we will be able to go live tonight out there for the round 4 stream. If so, I'll see you guys then.